I'm a hair mineral analysis expert. I have a background in functional medicine, and I educate people using HTMA testing to maximize health, erase debilitating symptoms, and gain energy. I'm a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, and I'm constantly searching for high-performance pros from all over the world to bring you this human optimization podcast. My name is Lisa Pitel-Killah. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast, and you are going to love today's show. I have Jeff Chilton here with me today, founder of and president of Namex, and we're going to talk all about medicinal mushrooms. And I'll tell you, I've been on the Namex website doing a lot of reading. There's an education tab there, which is amazing. So if you haven't checked out the website, we're obviously going to have a link in the description. But I want to tell you about Jeff because he has an amazing background, and he's going to expand on this for us when I'm done with my short intro, which is very difficult to do because he has so much behind all of this and why we're here today. And so started studying at the University of Washington back in 1970. In 73, started working on a mushroom farm, brought education to light with the 4 mushroom conferences in the Pacific Northwest back in kind of the late 70s, early 80s, and started started Namex in 89. So, I mean, just there's so much to talk about here with your history and mushrooms, of course, and of course, why we're here today. So Jeff, please expand on that a little bit and give a little background about the journey of opening Namex and from that point until today.
Sure. Well, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, and it's the evergreen state. The reason is that it rains a lot. It's the perfect climate for mushrooms. So we have wild mushrooms everywhere. It's wonderful. And when I went to university, I studied anthropology at University of Washington in the late 60s, but I decided also to take courses in mycology. So I put the two together. Mycology is the study of fungi, and I essentially studied the use of mushrooms in cultures worldwide for food, for medicine, and its shamanic purposes.
Amazing.
Now, when you graduate from university, what do you do with a degree in anthropology? Not a lot. So in 1973, I decided, I'd love to learn how to grow mushrooms. I went to the only mushroom farm in Washington State, applied for a job, got a job, big mushroom farm growing 2 million pounds of Agaricus mushrooms per year.
My goodness.
Lisa, I was there for the next 10 years, literally living with mushrooms as I learned all about how to grow them. And what was really cool was that we had a Japanese scientist on staff for research and development. He was growing oyster mushrooms, enoki mushrooms, and shiitake mushrooms. So that just broadened out my knowledge. And during the 70s, I just read everything I could get my hands on about mushroom growing in particular. But I also knew through my readings and my studies that mushrooms were used medicinally in Asia for thousands of years and actually worldwide. So in 1989, I started my company, Namex. And at that point in time, there were literally no functional mushrooms in the marketplace. There's lots of companies selling green herbs, mushrooms. No, absolutely not. I was all through the 90s educating people and companies to the value and benefits of what we now call functional mushrooms. And I'm still doing that today, and I'm really feel strongly about the benefits of mushrooms, and not just for functional medicinal use, but also as food.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I'm assuming that you've read about this. I know that I ended up learning about this just from my mentor, but there was a story kind of years ago with regards to an Olympic cycling team I believe it was a Chinese team, a women's Chinese cycling team. And they actually, I did a lot of reading on this after, but they were using reishi and cordyceps in order to just basically naturally enhance their stamina while they were cycling. And I think that for training and other purposes, I think that's amazing to be able to have that effect on the body.
And you were breaking up a little bit there, freezing a little bit, but were you talking about the women runners in China in the 90s?
I think I thought it was cycling, but yes, maybe you're right. It was definitely a women's team. And yeah, they had a specific, I remember this, I was reading about the specific dosing because I had used that for a while too when I was training, just with regards to the mix of cordyceps and the mix of reishi that they were using.
Yeah, well, here's the interesting part about that. And first of all, cordyceps, which is such an interesting mushroom. It doesn't even look like a mushroom. It's called winter worm summer grass. It is wildcrafted in Tibet. And it grows off of a caterpillar that has hibernated. And then instead of waking up, it has been infected by the cordyceps. And so it hibernates in the winter, in the summer, when it's all of a sudden up pops a cordyceps, and it's just a little blade-like fungus, and it's called winter worm summer grass. And it's used for high altitudes, altitude sicknesses, and it's also used for fatigue. Now, the thing about it is that particular fungus sells for about $15,000 a dried kilogram.
Yeah.
Who can afford it? Well, nobody. But today, which is really great, we cultivate that cordyceps, and it is no longer out of reach for people. So that's really great. But here's the funny thing, and this is kind of interesting too, is that this is 1993, Lisa. They had no tests for EPO. And they found out later that this coach, who actually had a product that he was selling and claimed it was cordyceps, it turns out later that actually they were doping. And that was really sort of the unfortunate part of it. Yes. And what happened is in the 2000 Olympics in Australia, now they had tests for EPO. And so a lot of his runners at that point dropped out and did not attend the Olympics, as well as swimmers from China. And, look, hello, Lance Armstrong and everybody else who was caught at that point because of testing. But anyway, that's just kind of like, I hear this coming up a lot. And when it first came out, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing news, right?
Yeah. And then the background comes out and you're like,
yes. And of course, that's why we always have to be careful about whatever information and be skeptical. And so, being sort of as deep into that as I am, that's something that I know a lot of other people do not. But anyway, cordyceps is a fantastic mushroom, and I highly recommend it. And right now, it's mostly used by athletes, and I think that's just so cool. It's the sort of like one of the few that we sell that is used for athletes. Although I will say this, most of the functional mushrooms can improve performance just through improving one's health, because the primary benefit they have is actually potentiating our immune system.
Right.
You do that, and your performance in life and health is going to elevate.
Yeah, I agree. And so I want to get into a few of, you have a great article that I was reading, and it was the top 10 questions of what you should ask about your mushrooms. So I'm going to, as we filter through here, I'm going to touch on some of those questions that I found them really interesting.
Awesome.
But so we've talked, let's talk about some of the specific nutritional benefits of mushrooms that you can share with the audience.
Sure. Awesome. It's interesting. When I went to work on the mushroom farm in 1973, classical nutritionists said mushrooms had no food value. what? They're very tasty.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
reason was because mushrooms are low in calorie and
Mm.
high in fiber.
Hmm.
Mushrooms have 20 to 40% protein. They're mostly made up of carbohydrates, but a high quality positive carbohydrates like mannitol or trehalose, they have no starch. So they're very low on the glycemic index. It's not
Yeah.
like the carbohydrates are something like you're eating a potato and up goes the glucose and then down the other side.
Yeah.
Um, they're low in fat. Again, high in fiber. They have good amounts of B vitamins, B1, 2, and 3,
Mhm.
potassium, phosphorus. I call mushrooms the forgotten food and the missing dietary link. And I absolutely believe that. And I think everybody should be putting mushrooms into their diet. It's a fantastic food, and you're going to get functional benefits just from eating them. Studies that
Mhm.
they've done where they have looked at large numbers of people and their diets have shown that people eating mushrooms literally live longer. So I think of them as like a longevity food.
Yeah.
And again, it's a missing link in our diet in North America.
And that's very true, actually. I feel like there's a few things like that that they don't seem to be the staple, right? We're always heading towards other things. And you hit the nail right on the head there, because I feel like a lot of people miss that. And even in the functional space of functional medicine, things like that, we don't hear a lot about medicinal mushrooms to a certain extent, right? It's more in the traditional Chinese medical practices and things like that. I hear about them all the time. So it's almost little pockets of those that use them and implement them.
Well, and you know what's really cool is that this is a food that also acts as a medicine, and
Yes.
food should give you those types of benefits,
Yeah.
you know. So for me, I just think, it's so much more than just alimentation for us. So it works in both ways.
Yeah. And so let's talk about, I mean, obviously you've been farming mushrooms since the 70s. And so let's just talk about the mushroom itself, because I think there's a lot to be said. Some people don't understand that there's the top of the mushroom, there's the mycelium. And so let's talk about the mushroom and then the cycle of growing, just so that people understand mushrooms just a little bit better.
Perfect. Yes. Well, how do you grow mushrooms? And first of all, have you ever been to a mushroom farm?
I haven't, but after being on your website, I was like, I have to go there because it is amazing.
One out of 100 people I ask that question has been on a mushroom farm. The
Yeah.
reason really is because mushrooms are grown indoors in either what look like large barns or big warehouse type units. So we don't know. But okay, how do you grow a mushroom? Mushrooms don't have seeds, Lisa. What do we do? Well,
Yes.
okay, mushrooms have spores. These spores in nature get out on the currents, wind
Mhm.
currents. They land on the ground. They land in wood when conditions are right.
Mhm.
And generally that means enough moisture. The
Yeah.
spore will germinate into a very, very fine filament we call a hypha. And when multiple filaments come together and fuse, they will form a network, and that network is called mycelium. Now, mycelium is the vegetative body of this fungal organism. So the
Mhm.
mycelium is the body. And what the mycelium is doing out there is breaking down all of this organic matter that builds up every year, annual plants, wood, leaves, you name it.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to break this down. Well, fungi are really important for that. So that's the job of the mycelium. It is out there spreading, it is colonizing this. When conditions are right, which in the Pacific Northwest and most places it's in the fall,
Yeah.
temperature goes down, humidity comes up. That's key. It's got to be a moist environment.
Mhm.
Up comes the mushroom, and the mushroom will go through a number of stages, start very, very small, and then turn into what we would call a button, and then go through these stages of maturity until up comes the stem. We see a cap. Under the cap are gills. That's where the spores are produced. It produces the spore. Now we have sort of the completion of the life cycle. And this is so important for a number of reasons. When you're buying a supplement, you want to make sure that you get the proper plant part. So when you're buying ginseng, you want a root. Yep. When you're buying echinacea, you want the flower. When you're buying ginkgo, you want the leaf. So these are the plant parts of this mushroom, fungal parts, but plant parts, spore, mycelium, and mushroom. And it is the mushroom that is the real biofactor for all of these important compounds. That's what's been used traditionally for thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine. And that's what you have to look for when you're buying a supplement, because let me tell you, the market. If you've been into supplements at all, yes, that there are good supplements, and then there are supplements that are absolutely bogus, and you're not getting what they say you should be getting. And this is true of this space for a mushroom supplement. And that's a subject we have to definitely talk about.
Well, and that's question number 2 on that list of 10. Right? That was question number 2. What do you need? What the important questions to ask about your mushroom supplement? And that was number 2. And I found that really, because it is, the supplement industry is, there are really reputable brands out there. And then there are brands that are using marketing to their advantage. And so when I was reading that, I found it really interesting, because they do have to list the fungi part, right? Yes, on the label.
That's
so
right.
That you know which one it is.
Right.
Now our audience is educated to know what that is, now that you've told them. But in a lot of their literature, they may be using the word mushroom all over, and then people get confused. They think that it's the mushroom, but it's actually the mycelium.
Yes, exactly. And there's a reason for that. Mushrooms are expensive to grow. So I can grow mushrooms and put them into the food market, and maybe I'll get paid $5 a pound for my mushrooms, my fresh mushrooms, right? Right. Mushrooms, like most vegetables, are 90% water. You dry those out, which is a supplement, is a dried powder. Now you have to get $50 for that same pound of mushrooms. So the economics of growing mushrooms in North America does not work for supplements. So what happens? Some companies will grow this mycelium, which is the body, the mycelium, the vegetative body. They'll grow it on sterilized grain. Now, the interesting part of that is sterilized grain with mycelium on it is actually the seed that we would normally use to grow mushrooms, because so seed for growing mushrooms is actually live mycelium, but you need a carrier, because you just can't have mycelium kind of spread it out or anything. You grow it on sterilized grain, and then those grains, each one becomes a seed because it's covered with mycelium, and you put it into whatever you're growing your mushrooms on, like let's just say the compost of an Agaricus farm or something. Perfect for spreading through each seed. The mycelium spreads out until it colonizes. Well, companies, instead of using that for seed, what some companies do now, they grow that out. Then once it's all completely colonized and it's white with mycelium, they will dry it, grind it to a powder, grain and all.
That was my quack cake.
And call it mushroom. It's not mushroom. And in 2015, I did a study where I used a test for beta glucans, which is the important compound in mushrooms. That's what makes them a functional mushroom, that gives them their medicinal properties. I did a test. I bought 40 different of these types of products off the internet. I had dried mushrooms that I was testing, mushroom extracts. In a normal mushroom, you're going to have 25 to 60% beta glucan. Okay. Good. And you're going to have very low levels, or what are called alpha glucan, which are the starches. Okay. Now, when I tested these products it was just the opposite. It was 5% on average of beta glucan. Oh, and guess what? 30 to 60% alpha glucan, which are the starches. And that's what you're getting with those products is you're getting grain starch. And people don't know that because most of those companies will not actually put that on the label. Some do. And in the supplements facts, it may say mycelium. And if you look in the fine print, it will say myceliated rice or myceliated oats. But on that front panel of the supplement, what does it say? Reishi mushroom, shiitake mushroom, with a photo of a mushroom. And you're like, oh, I've heard a lot about this particular brand. I'm going to buy it.
Perfect.
You don't even know that what you're actually getting is, instead of a functional mushroom, you're getting mostly grain starch. It is absolutely unethical. And here's the kicker. You know, we think supplements, they're not regulated. Supplements are regulated to pieces. You can have that grain starch certified organic, kosher, grown in a GMP facility on, you can have like 10 different merit badges there. It's still not a good product. So, oh man, I feel so sorry for people that purchase those products. And look, I used to go to, you know, it hasn't been up for a while, but Paleo FX, which is a conference in Austin. And I'd have a booth there and somebody come up and say, oh man, I love mushrooms. They're so great. And I'm taking this wonderful supplement. I'm like, oh, that's great. What brand? They tell me the brand. And then I say to them, oh, by the way, just so you know, that's mostly grain starch in there. And they're just like, oh God, you are kidding me.
Oh, that's awful. That is awful.
Oh, well, especially for, you know, naturopaths even prescribe those types of products because they don't know any better. And what happens is that you have somebody coming in with a life-threatening illness saying, I need something to help with my immune system. They give them those products, and I'm just like, oh man, that is shameful.
Well, and I feel like too, when there are companies out there like that are using that particular mix, it gives the entire mushroom area, if you will, a bad name because they buy it and they're like, well, I didn't have any good results. Well, that's because you're not even taking the actual product, right?
Exactly.
Drives me crazy.
Exactly. No, it fouls the whole category. And like you say, people say, yeah, I tried it, but you know, nothing really happened. And on that particular point too, let me just say this. Some people, you know, I read sometimes reviews on Amazon about different retail products and it says, oh, I just bought this great mushroom product because, you know, I felt a cold coming on and I started taking it. Today I feel great. Look, it doesn't work that way. You have to be taking the product for a period of time before you're going to get the benefits. You know, I look at it as preventive medicine. And that to me too is a lot of what diet and supplementation is all about. I mean, why do we take a vitamin D supplement or a vitamin C supplement? We do it because we're uncertain whether we're getting enough of those nutrients, and maybe we think we need more. So this is how I look at mushroom supplements. You need to take them for a while before they'll really start working for you.
Yeah, I agree. And so what do you think? And again, everybody is different. We're all bio-individual. But just on average, what would you say for someone to have, I guess, even as an athlete, maybe some, you know, noticeable benefits? Would you say a month or maybe 2 months, 3 months, something like that, consistently taking the product so that they see the benefits of it? Would that be about right?
Yeah, sure. And you know, the way I look at it is, you know, when your immune system is functioning at a high level, and look, people who have a bad diet, don't exercise, etc. this isn't going to really help them so much, but when your immune system is functioning at a higher level, you're not normally going to be getting a cold or
Right.
the flu or some other type of illness like that. So they've shown antiviral benefits, and just overall you're going to feel healthier.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would really look for. And I, you know what, it's really funny because here we are in this whole era of what's gone on in the last 2 years and
Of
stuff. And
course. Yeah.
you know, I have friends that have gotten sick, and it hasn't affected me health wise in any way, not
Amazing.
at all.
Yeah.
And I don't get colds or flus or anything like that. And
Mhm.
it's sort of like, oh yeah, it's easy for you to say since you're selling a product and that's how you sell it. Well, look, yeah, I get it, but I'm just saying, I also have a fairly uh, reasonable diet. I do get exercise. I feel
Yeah.
that's very important. It's
Mhm.
look, that's one of the things that we've learned, isn't it? That health is and the health benefits out there. It's a holistic
It's the
type of
big
view.
picture.
Is a
That's
very
right.
big picture, and that's why it's so it's so terrible that you go to a normal MD and they don't know anything about diet, or they don't even ask you, oh, so how's your diet? Are you eating nothing but processed foods?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's true. We're always talking about getting the rainbow and, your plate and all this, but yeah, it's very true. And I feel like that's something that's kind of left behind in that medical model, right? And
Oh,
it's really is too bad, because I think
it,
you're right. There's those basics that fuel our foundation, right?
yeah, well, and one of the interesting parts about the whole COVID thing was they found that the majority of the people that were being hospitalized had very low levels of vitamin D. And
Mm.
I'm like, why aren't there people on the street corner handing out vitamin D to everybody? Take vitamin D. And by the way, on vitamin D, it's really interesting because mushrooms have a compound in them called
Mhm.
ergosterol. It's very
Mhm.
similar to our cholesterol.
Mm.
We get our vitamin D from the sun, but how we get it is that the sun, the UV rays, uh, react with our cholesterol in the skin, and that produces pre-vitamin D, and that's where we get our vitamin D primarily. Fungi have this ergosterol, and when they are exposed to UV light, that also turns into vitamin D. So
That's
one of
interesting.
the things that we've been working on is exposing our dried mushroom extract powders to
Mhm.
UV light to basically boost up the vitamin D levels in them.
Mm.
And if you're taking vitamin D, and there's D2 and D3. D2 is what's in a mushroom. D3,
Mhm.
it comes from sheep. It's in the lanolin. Um, D2 that we're producing is nothing but a mushroom powder there's no processing at all. If you
Yeah.
look at the processing at D3, oh my God, it is like unbelievable
Yeah.
how they actually extract and purify that. And it's not a process that you'd like, gee, I love the way they make D3. So this is good for vegans if they're
Yeah.
want a non-animal product, but
Mhm.
also I just think, I love the fact that here is some other benefit from mushrooms that we can enhance this ergosterol that's in them. I
Yeah.
just think it's wonderful.
I think that's fantastic. And so I want to talk, because you did some extensive travel through China, right? Doing more study.
Absolutely.
Share a little bit about that, and just what that experience brought to obviously the business that you had started and were in at the time, and now.
Well, you know what? I went to China first in 1989. I
Yeah.
never expected I'd go to China.
Yeah.
I was more focused on Mexico, South America. Go
Hmm.
to China to an international mushroom conference.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's where all the research is going on. And not only that, China has probably a dozen different research stations on mushrooms. In the United States, we have one. They have
Wow.
a dozen. Not only that, they have tens of thousands of small mushroom growers. Today, China produces 90% of the world's mushrooms.
Wow.
So, as a commercial mushroom grower, I understood I cannot grow mushrooms in North America, turn them into an extract and sell them into the market. It's not going to work. So that's why I went to China, and not just for that alone, but also to learn more about what they were doing over there and more about how they use the mushrooms. I went to probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 different conferences during the 90s on all different facets of the mushrooms. In 1997, because I was starting to have extracts produced for me over there, I brought OCIA, a large organic certification company in the United States, to China, and had the very first organic certification workshop for mushrooms in China, because I totally believe in organic production of foods. So my mushrooms had to be certified. They're certified by high quality German certifiers. We grow our mushrooms now way back in the mountains, far away from the industrial pollution. You know, people say, oh, you're growing in China. I'm like, well, you don't eat food that comes off the Gulf Coast of the United States. Not only that, look, the United States pours chemicals all over our food. So unless you're purchasing organic produce and so on, well, you're getting a lot of chemicals too. And that's really unfortunate as well. But China has just been amazing, and they have done so much in the 30 years that I've been over there, and their mushroom production. I mean, they have some of the most advanced farms in the world, but most of our farms are small farmers producing very naturally, and they are so highly skilled. And I just love my Chinese associates. They are wonderful people, and it's just been a pleasure to work with them. And they have produced very high quality products for us. And you know, Lisa, we test and test and test before anything gets shipped out of China. It's like heavy metals. It's pesticides. It's a microbiological panel. When it comes to the United States, we test it again. I mean, our testing budget is unbelievable, but it's important. You know, it's really important.
It is important. Certificate of analysis to make sure that all of those tests have been done, so that people know that they're getting the highest quality product, is so important.
Oh yeah, and that's why we test for the beta glucans and other actives in our products, because when we sell a product, I don't want to just say, oh yeah, this reishi mushroom is really good for this, that, and the other. Trust us. And it's like, well, look, this reishi mushroom that we sell, we've qualified it by testing for beta glucans, ergosterol, ergothioneine. We've got retained samples, voucher specimens. We are giving you a high quality product that has been analytically validated. And to me, that's the most important thing that I can do.
Yeah, 100%. That is the most important thing you can do. And, you know, we're talking about organic, because nowadays, you know, people don't realize in a lot of instances with regards to really the amount of toxins that we're exposed to, which includes herbicides and pesticides and glyphosates and all of these things, they start to affect our system, our functioning of our systems.
Yes.
Right?
Oh yeah, and look, we're consuming those from the day we start to put food in our mouth. You know, from very young. And so, you know, for the people that use them, they're like, oh yeah, they'll never notice it because it won't really hurt them until 30 or 40 years out. And so how can they blame us for it, right? Well, look, I want clean food. I'm lucky in the Pacific Northwest, we have wonderful water here. Where I live, I have absolutely clean air. So I live in a pretty clean place, and I can access high quality organic food. And I do not go into the aisles that have all the processed food. maybe I'll buy a bottle of salsa or something like that, or you know what I mean, or a can of sometimes a can of olives, or I
Yeah.
don't know. But all the rest, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm not going to shop in those. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of on the outside. I'm a meat eater,
Yeah.
and here, look, the other thing too is my favorite food is salmon, and we
Mm,
have the most wonderful seafood where I live up here in
yeah.
British Columbia. I mean,
Yeah.
I love seafood and I've eaten it all my life. And that's my staple is
Yeah.
seafood and then veggies, very low carbs these days. I don't need carbs because I don't need that kind of fuel to burn anything, right? I mean, man, if I ate carbs, I'd be a balloon.
Well, you're moderating your carbs with your exercise, and that's good, right? That is
Yeah,
good
yeah.
awareness to
Well,
have.
yeah. And look, let me just say this too. I love bread, so I have
Ooh.
toast in the morning. I will have a sandwich, but I've eliminated carbs from my dinner. Most of my dinner is just meat and a lot of
And
veggies.
veggies, yeah.
I mean, you should see my compost bucket. By the end of the week, it is just full of me cleaning my veggies.
That's fantastic. Oh my goodness. Well, and so we talked about testing, and so for people in general, and we've talked about the health benefits of mushrooms. I'm curious to know, just maybe pick two different types. If there's a reason why you would pick one mushroom, say, over another, like maybe you use a cordyceps rather than a reishi. There's lion's mane. There's other ones as well. Pick a couple, and just if people were thinking, maybe I should try this, what health benefits are they all kind of toted just a little bit differently, because they obviously have different properties because they're different mushrooms, right? What would you say would be two of the more common ones, and a couple of the benefits that come along with those that are
Well,
specific?
if I were to pick one mushroom, I would definitely pick reishi mushroom. And
Okay.
reishi mushroom has got a long history in Asia. It's highly revered.
Yeah.
You see it in their architect. You see it architecture. You see it in their art.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful. Have you ever seen a reishi mushroom? Or
I haven't. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have so much research to do.
I should send you one because it's a beautiful. It's like a ram's horn shape.
Oh
It's
my goodness.
red. It's woody.
Yep.
So you don't eat it. It's more for a tea or some kind of an extract.
Yep.
But it is the one. It has one of the highest levels of beta glucans, and that's one of the cool
Mm,
things about being able to analyze for the beta glucans in mushrooms. We know which ones have what
right.
amount of the beta glucans. Reishi and turkey tail have the highest. Now, reishi is different from all the others in that it has bitter compounds in it called triterpenoids.
Mhm.
And those triterpenoids make it very unique among the other mushrooms, and they work with the liver. They're very
Mm,
good for liver function. So it has two functions that just elevates it a bit over all the others. So if you want one mushroom to supplement with, I would say definitely
reishi.
reishi.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Now,
Excellent.
now, now, picking a second one is
Mhm.
not that easy because, look, the most popular one that we sell right now is a lion's mane.
Yeah, I've heard it's been a buzz in the system for a while, definitely, for sure. And that's why I kind of mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because 8 years ago I must have sold 5 kilos of lion's mane.
Yeah.
It was like nobody wanted lion's mane.
Like, what's that?
Today we sell probably, I don't know, 6, 8 tons of lion's mane. It's just like
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
So, so, but lion's mane, delicious edible mushroom. If you can
Mhm.
get it in your market, buy it. It is so tasty, really a wonderful mushroom. But it is considered a nootropic. And
Mhm.
what it does is it stimulates what is called nerve growth factor, a compound that we produce that helps to organize and even promote the growth of neurons.
Yeah.
As we get older, um, we don't produce as much nerve growth factor. Lion's mane will stimulate the production of this nerve growth factor. So studies have shown that it does help with cognition
Mhm.
and memory issues. And look, boy, I'll tell you, Lisa, especially as you get older, it's like memory is like What do you say your name was again? You know what I
Well,
mean?
I feel like that now. I'm like, what was that again? Wait, did I write that down?
Yeah, I know. And whenever somebody says that, it says, "Oh, I feel so much better now."
Yeah, right.
So lion's mane, a lot of people use it that way. They use it as something that can help them with cognition, maybe help them stay focused, and maybe give them a little better memory. And look, one of the things I would say too is you have to, with a lot of herbs, they'll say, "Oh, take 2 capsules a day." Why did it say take 2 capsules a day? That in a lot of cases, it's like, that's only a gram of what it is. Is that going to be enough? Well, they do that because it's like, okay, we're going to give you 60 capsules in this bottle. That's a 1 month supply.
Exactly.
No
Yes.
reason other than that. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, with a lot of these herbs, and even with some of the mushroom products, you're better off taking more than less. I mean, you don't want to take too little, and maybe you don't get anything
Right.
out of it, right? So I kind of
Yeah.
advocate for that a bit. And again, everybody's different, as we talked about
Yeah.
earlier. And so, but those two in particular, I'd say. I mean, the other ones that we have are, again, the primary benefit is immunological potentiation.
Yeah.
So most of them will give you that. We have one product where we put 5 of our very top extracts together.
Oh, that's interesting.
And let me just say something about that too, because you know the products out there that it's like, all you have to do is take this every day and
And
it
that's
eliminates
it.
everything else.
That doesn't
And
exist.
oh my God.
It does
And I'm
not
just like,
exist.
oh, sure, right. All it does is like, for example, there are products out there that have 7 or 10 or 16, or the highest I saw was somebody had 24 species in a product, and
Oh
they
my
act like
goodness.
this is better. It's not better, it's worse, because as you add all those other species, you are basically cutting down the amount of the really important species.
Right.
So all of those, I would say the very max you would ever want to have in terms of product would be 5. Beyond that, you are basically getting a inferior product if you go beyond that. So that's, and I've seen a couple of studies that have shown a bit of synergy. Hard to say. The beta glucan has a little bit different architecture in each species. That's why certain species are medicinal,
Mhm.
because all mushrooms have beta glucan. It's in their cell walls. It makes up 50% of the cell wall. So every mushroom has it. That's why I'm always saying eat mushrooms no matter what, because you will be getting some beta glucans, and they make up a large part of the fiber, which feeds our microbiome.
Right.
And so again, that's where really the beta glucan being a little bit different in each one. That's why we've got only 10 very specific species that we sell, not 100 species, because I've got a
Right.
book that says here's 270 different species that have medicinal value. I'm like, well, that doesn't help me much, but it's interesting.
It's interesting. Yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, that's a bit
Yeah. What are the important
overzealous.
ones? And the key is that these particular species that we sell and use have a lot of scientific uh, backing to
Yeah.
them. And that's how I look at it. What has been used for thousands of years? What are the main species in traditional Chinese medicine? And then, okay, how much scientific research has been put into these mushrooms? Put the two together. There's
And
the
away you
list.
go.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what? That should it shows me how passionate you are about what you're doing, right? And the quality of what that brings to just the consumer market, which is really important.
Yeah.
And I always say, if you are going to use a supplement, it always comes back to the science, right? We always want to come back to the science, because if there's no science behind it, why are you just randomly choosing to believe what's in front of you when there's nothing to back it up? That
Oh,
that always astonishes me.
absolutely. And it's important to question things. The thing is, especially in any industry, there is so much hype out there. I mean, one of the mushrooms that is hyped, way overhyped, is chaga. And chaga now, if you go out on the internet to these sites, it'll be called the king of mushrooms,
Mm,
and it will list. There's nothing that chaga can't do. They call it they list it as a panacea. And they go on and on and on. And I'm just like, God, will you just stop that? That's just, I don't want to hear that. That's terrible to be talking that way, because it's all just marketing speak, people trying to sell a product. And it's like, no, chaga has a couple of benefits. It's good for the stomach. It has shown positive antiviral effects. But look, don't promote it as a panacea. That is just wrong. And I really don't like that kind of talk, or anytime there's these wild claims made for mushrooms. And it's like, we do not make claims. We basically say, look, here's what are the important compounds that you should be looking for. These are what science has told us are the beneficial compounds in mushrooms. That's what you want to look for. Mm-hmm. We're not going to make a claim, oh, it's going to cure this, it's going to cure that. Sorry, that's not what we do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that's fantastic, because again, you're right. There is so much marketing out there. I actually feel bad for the consumer sometimes, because it's hard enough. I talk to my assistant about this all the time. Being in the health and wellness industry as we are, it's hard enough to filter through all that information. And I can't imagine not having the education that we have to be able to filter through that and have so much in front of us. It's very difficult. And so I don't envy the end consumer, especially when they get on the internet.
Well, no, and especially when they're following the advice of some influencer or some movie star or some other cult-like figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, exactly. So I think that that's a very valid point. And, to be able to have a little bit of clarity, and that's why I do this. I bring experts like you to the forefront for our audience to be able to bring a little bit of clarity to the Google search, which is always a nice thing for people to be able to experience and understand.
Oh, and that must be very gratifying for you, Lisa.
No, I think it's fantastic. And we get comments all the time. I love sharing with experts, and obviously you sharing your experience and just with the passion that you have with what you do. And obviously the medicinal parts of the mushrooms are so important. And so I'm definitely going to be buying some reishi. I'm like, liver, everything comes back to the liver. I am done. That is exactly what I'm going to be doing and adding into my daily regime.
Awesome. That's terrific.
Yeah. Well, and so thank you, Jeff, for joining us. Such great information today. So Jeff's website, remember, is NAMX. And I encourage you, go to the website, click on the education tab, go to the document that says 10 important questions to ask when you're purchasing your mushroom supplement, because that one I found was really, really educational. And I learned a lot by reading that.
Oh, great. I'm so happy. And I always point people to our education menu and say, go there. I've got slideshows there too that show how we grow our mushrooms, how we process them. We have a retail site that's called realmushrooms.com, also with a ton of really, really good educational information. So I highly recommend that too. And man, Lisa, it's just been such a pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for being here, Jeff. And so for those of you watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to my channel. We have a brand new episode every 2 weeks. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, make sure to give this episode a like, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to today's show. Head over to Pitel-Killah.com to gain access to some amazing free resources that will help you gain energy, erase debilitating symptoms, and be the best version of you. Remember to give this podcast a like and follow me on social media at Lisa Pitel-Killah. I'm here every 2 weeks with a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. Until next time.